Hey, everybody, it's me, Dr. Devin Geeson, welcoming you to Backstage. Today, I have the pleasure of hosting Greg Essenmacher. He is the CEO and founder of GNA Consult. Hey, Greg, how are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Thanks so much for having me on, Devin. It's a pleasure.
We're so happy to have you because today is the day that the world gets to meet Backstage and Greg Essenmacher. And they get to know so much more about you and what you do. So let's start with something totally simple and benign. How did you get connected to Backstage?
Wait, before I answer that, is this my coming out party? Because you know me a little bit, Devin. We could talk about that and start there. Okay, we'll set that aside. We'll talk about that later. So, how I got connected to Backstage, honestly, I kind of feel like I was being recruited and stalked like many, many months, even a year or so before. So, Laura Nelson and I met a number of years prior, and she saw me on stage, and we share this story together because we're good friends now. And when she saw me on stage, and she's like, who's this guy? What does he know? Because I was on stage with Amal and with Tanner, and she made that comment, and I didn't know at the time. And when I first met her, I'm like, who's this chick? What does she know? And come to find out, because we're such similar people, it's kind of like magnets, right? A positive and negative magnet will attract instantly. Well, two similarly charged magnets will be like, "Nyeh, nyeh." And so that's actually how. And so over the course of time, I had learned about her affiliation and membership and Backstage, and she introduced me to some people. And it was actually at Dental Podfest when I met a number of individuals, and Elijah and I had met a number of years ago. And then we actually met, sat down, talked about it, and I flipped the script and asked him a lot of questions about Backstage. And that's where my story began with Backstage.
I love it. Well, we're going to dive in here in a minute, but, tell us just a little bit about what you do in your own words, kind of a high level.
Yeah, absolutely. So at GNA Consult, we work with full arch practices, those that do all on X, and the vast majority, whether they're single location, emerging groups, and even some DSOs, we work with them. And most do general dentistry as well. So they've added this as part of their portfolio as, auxiliary services.
Okay.
Auxiliary services meaning all on X, right? Sleep, clear aligners. So all on
Mhm.
X, specifically implants. And we help them to teach, coach, and train every touch point of that patient journey as they're trying to capture leads, convert those leads into consultations that show up, and then close those leads. Any or all parts of that in order to do it more profitably as part of their practice. So they're not taking the profits from their successful GP practices and dumping it into the abyss, which is that red ocean of marketing, and having no success or results because most of them are clinically competent in this procedure, but really it's about capturing the patients and delivering those brand new smiles for that awesome reveal that they're looking for.
I love that. So it's easy to understand the specific problem that you tackle in dentistry, but was there a pivotal moment in your life where you realized that the world needed GNA consult?
Yeah, well, there was probably a couple of moments, but there was one particularly. So working with, I was recruited, if you will. So Straumann Group, number one implant company in the world. They knew with a premium implant only, about 2013, they started searching and decided we need to get in the value implant segment because it was growing at 3 to 5x that the premium
Mm.
segment was, even though the whole pool was growing. And so they wanted to launch the Neodent line into the US. I was employee number three for them and with them. So helped to build and grow that brand. And in 2008, I had the good fortune of meeting Dr. E, right, as he's known, right, Southern California, Mr. Hollywood. And at the time I met him, very first meeting, within 5 minutes, he had shared with me he had 6 practices, GP practices, and was
Mhm.
doing like one arch like every 6 weeks. And so I asked him straight up, so what do you want to be when you grow up? And he had aspirations to do full arch. Like, I want to do arches. This is what I want to do. And I won't mention here the words that I used because it was a little bit of sailor tongue, but I basically said, you're a fool if you don't sell those 2 practices and dump them that are a drain on your P&Ls. That you're losing money month over month over month because you've got all of these employment issues going on. They're distracting you from your goal, your purpose, what you really want to be when you grow up. And that was the moment when I said, there's something wrong if people can't pursue their passion. And I said, what's preventing you from doing more full arch cases? And that's when he told me, well, it's about, picking the right marketing company, and then who's going to actually like answer the phones. And because it's not that he wasn't
Mhm.
spending money on marketing. And that was the moment when I said, this is a guy who's got the look, he's got the facility, he's got the training. Where does he really need help? And I've always had that passion because there are some that come from the manufacturing side, and others like yourself, a doctor, or others who come up through what I call operations, right? Through the practices that do what I do, consulting. But I come from the manufacturing side, and at all of these conferences, you see, and over the course of years, 2010, even like 2020s, where conferences happen, people have booths, all the doctors and the staff, they go to their CE events. And what happens in those halls, right? Where all the booths are? Well, some of the people who are there, whether they're reps or they're regionals or owners, they go and fart off somewhere and go and have lunch and sit down and relax and answer emails. Well, early in my career, I was always about, well, what do my customers need? What do my doctors need? What are they looking for? I was implant rep, right? I was implant regional manager. If they needed a plumber, I'd find a plumber that was somewhere in that hall and meet and find neighbors, industry partners. And that's really how I built and grow GNA Consult, is through industry partners and through referrals from existing. And so that's what I think is the difference between what I've done and what I do and what most of the others have done, I think, where it's more transactional. I'm relational. I want to figure out how to build and grow your business because I know ultimately it's going to help build and grow mine. And that's the abundance mindset.
So it's fun because I hear so much passion in your voice. And I know you anyway. We're good friends, and there's always passion in your voice. But I get the feeling that somewhere along the line, there was emotion. Like,
Hmm.
was it when you were working with that doctor that you had some emotion that watching what he was going through invoked?
Yeah, it's not. It's actually very personal to me. So, my mom passed when I was very young, when I was 4 years old from cancer. And I didn't realize and I didn't know the story because I didn't get a lot of the stories from my mom's side of the family growing up. But what I did learn later in life with my cousins and getting to know them and my aunts and uncles on that side of the family is that my mom grew up on a farm and they didn't brush their teeth. That there was no oral hygiene whatsoever. So, all of those siblings between the ages of 18 and 20 lost all of their teeth. All the teeth were removed. That's what they did. And they were in dentures, right? So now as like adult children, like we became in like our 40s and 50s, and what they've gone through of like securing those dentures and all the challenges with that, and knowing that I could have given that to my mom, and then going back in my memory bank that I have as a younger person. And I remember my Aunt Mary, she always, after my mom had passed, she always wanted to cuddle me on her lap when I was very young. And I always thought, what was that going on where like in her mouth where they would like kind of like her teeth always like move differently than everybody else. And so piecing that together and not even realizing until a number of years after getting into full arch with the Neodent line, because it really was like a full arch line, putting those two pieces together and realizing that my emotional passion, and had my mom lived, that would have been something that I would have wanted to give to her, the ability to eat and to chew and to function. And seeing these patient reveals over the course of years, because I've been in over 1,000 surgeries, full arch surgeries, and seeing it on the other side. Now, it's not every time that you get that emotional patient reveal,
Yes.
but it doesn't take many to really start to shift your perspective on what we do and what treatment coordinators do and what those handling lead calls do and what we're doing for practices, because there are over 35 million edentulous patients in the United States alone. And servicing just part of them and giving them the ability to smile in pictures again, to be able to eat, function, and chew. And with people living longer and longer, imagine going back into the dating pool, Devin, in your 50s or 60s, and you have a bombed out mouth.
It's not hard
Like,
to imagine.
how are you going to go back out into the dating
You
pool,
can't.
right? Because
You can't.
you put your best foot forward, but you got to put your best tooth forward, right? Or your best teeth forward. So for me, that's really where a lot of the emotional connection, it's more of a buildup than like that one moment. It's been an
Yeah.
accumulation of moments. I have more of the educational variety.
So what do you think that that experience with your family and your mom and your Aunt Mary, what do you think those experiences taught you about what really matters in dentistry?
Yeah. To be completely honest, when I remember, right? And that's just completely honest because there are times that too much of, as my son likes to call it, the Greg comes out, right? Which is that hard-nosed driving, doesn't have the compassion when the real authentic self comes out, right? As you said, like always with passion, with who I am. When that part comes out, it's really that integrated life, that passion comes out, that comes out in business, right? That's really who I am. And when I'm able to show that, whether it's, social media posts that a lot of people know, I have this Oh Honey series, right? And it's
I
kind
love
of
it.
like flippantly talking about like, oh, honey, right? If you have a ton of no-shows, it's got very little to do with your marketing. It's really your team, right? It's poking fun in this, Southern twangy kind of, fun, lighthearted, but it's got a bite to it because that's who I am in my life with my friends, with those that I sponsor in recovery, to my spouse, to my husband, to all of it, right? That's what GNA stands for, Greg and Al, right? To honor him and how he supports me and what I do. Having this integrated life and being who I am, right? Being maybe not so much of all of who I am all the time, but still that professional piece. And my team talks about this, right? You can be very professional, but still have fun and play. And that's a part of backstage, right?
I
Isn't
love
that
that.
one of the three core values, right?
It
Is to
is.
have fun, right?
Yes.
And respect. And those are the pieces in the core value. And that's one of the main things that attracted me to be a part of backstage. It is
Yes.
really, it's the fun, but the professionalism. And it's not, oh, how can we refer to other people? It's no, how can we build and grow? And this concept of bending time, that I can go to others who have gone before me and I can learn from what they've already done. Because I can tell you, Devin, for me personally, and I don't want to go off on a diatribe, but I just want to get very vulnerable here. So I helped launch the Neodent brand. And then in 2015, I did start GNA Consult. And for 2 years, I did. And I didn't make the best business decisions because I didn't have mentors and I didn't have others. And it cost me, not only financially, but it cost me mentally and emotionally and
Mm.
spiritually because I felt like a failure and I had to go, what I felt like, go back into corporate America. Right. And I did. And I was grateful at the opportunity to join the Neodent team again and learn a ton again. But then once I relaunched my brand in 2021, there was this seeking because I was still doing on my own, but I also found other mentors in business. But to find a group of people in all different verticals of the industry at different levels of growth and development in business and entrepreneurship, that has been really game changing for me and what I've been able to build and grow. Wherever you're at, having that is critically important.
I see so much parallelism, Greg, in you and the dentists we serve each and every day, feeling like we're out here alone on an island of one, having to figure it out, make business decisions that we might not be prepared to make. How is it that you come in, Greg, and take that dentist by the hand, by the heart, and change that for them?
Yeah, a lot of it is being vulnerable with them, right? And sharing with them and the identification that I have now as a business owner. I can tell you that, 5, 6 years ago when I was under the umbrella of Strawman Group, it was a security blanket. I wasn't making decisions based on my own bottom line, making decisions of personnel, right? I was making personnel decisions, but the repercussions of those decisions weren't my bottom line, right? And unemployment for certain states, because all my employees are remote in different states, like when you get those unemployment and you see and you're like, oh, like how does that personally affect me? Or now you have to start paying federal taxes biweekly because your what you pay in taxes now is
Yeah,
above a certain threshold.
right.
And you start looking at all these different things of what I thought it was to start a
Ooh,
business, because I thought I was going to be a solopreneur. I was like, I've had like dozens and dozens and dozens of people direct or dotted line to me at one point. I just want to be my own. And then it was, well, clients are coming along. I can either turn them down or build and grow a team and a business. And what I found is that as the team continues to grow, I'm able to service a wider array of clients, from the single entrepreneur to, the larger group DSOs that really want to pilot and grow their own, right? And customize what I do rather than the wash, rinse, repeat,
yes.
which is so common. Because I can tell you, like, I work well with, out of the 7 personality types that are out there, you can look it up. It's very common, like in workshops and whatnot, but like the different styles, I work well with about 5 of them. But the other 2 that I don't, that's where I rely on a director. And that's where I rely on different leaders in different departments that I have. And
Yeah.
having that self-awareness, I don't have it all figured out. I know that I keep learning and keep growing, but that's okay. And I think that's when you talk about the parallels with doctors and dentists that feel like the island of one,
Yeah.
breaking down those barriers and helping them to relate and relating
Mm.
to them now is something that's totally different. And that's the evolution that I'm going through, not have gone through, but I'm going through with, and not, they're not customers, right? It's more of, hey, we're on this journey together
Oh,
and
I
I
love
can
it.
relate to instead of
Yes.
selling to. It's different.
What do you think the biggest misconceptions are about working with somebody like you to bring a new, you know, auxiliary or vertical, like I like to call them, to fruition is?
That's a really good question. I think it depends on what level the clinician's at when it comes to introducing or evolving in All on X, right? So if they're new to it, they don't know what they don't know. So they're more on the discovery phase. And I'm finding more and more for what I do with those clinicians is really educational. In variety, right? Sending them to what I call like their treatment coordinators to a boot camp, right?
Mm.
Go and get some basic foundational and what it's like to be able to treatment plan of a 20, 30, $50,000 case if you never have. You've got to get some good foundation stuff, right? The customization that we do is pretty high level, right? It's just like if you're starting to drive, if you have a 16-year-old at home and they're starting to drive, you're probably not going to put them in a Porsche or a Lamborghini. You can, I'm
Oh,
not saying you can't, but you're probably not going to, right? You're probably going to start them off with something fairly conservative and maybe something that's a little, has a few more, a few more miles on that tread. And it's what you do. And so, but for those that are a little more skilled and have gone through different marketing companies and they understand the challenge. I was just at the Neodent Full Arch Summit, and almost to a clinician, it was, man, converting those marketing leads into consultations that show up and are ready. That's why we stratify all of the dental knowledge of patients that are calling in and filling out the surveys pretty quickly. We categorize them buyers, researchers, and tire kickers. Because if you have hundreds of leads coming in a month, because that's what your ad spend is, you have to know pretty quickly like which ones. And it's without like judging necessarily, but it's categorizing them. And there are telltale signs. And that's part of the IP process that I have. I mean, when you trademark something, the government really wants to know, do you have something that's unique in your space? And
sure.
that's what we have in our sales process and our
Mhm.
framework. And that's what's critically important. So we even do that with clients that reach out, right? So where are you at in your learning process? What are you trying to ascertain? And as I talked about the three different phases, if you will, they can a la carte one piece or they can take, the 360 view, whatever works best for them.
I love that there are options. And, you know, it makes me wonder what happens, do you think, to the majority of dentists that try to go down this road alone?
Yeah, some can find their way and be successful, right? And just like on my socials, and I believe in like sharing, right? There's some that are like,
So
"Oh
agree
no,
with
I've
that.
got certain secrets, you can't have it." Well, I share most of the framework. I do it when I speak in front of clinicians and teams and whatnot. Here's the framework. It's no secret. If you can implement it, great, do it. But if you want to accelerate what you're trying to do in a shorter period of time, if you there's three things that are limited, Devin, in life, in business, you name it: time, talent, and treasure. Period. You have to, I don't want to say sacrifice, you have to compromise one for the other. If you want to
Prioritizing.
if you want to give up your time and not your money, great, then you can do it. Just like clinicians, here's an example. Those that do like digital dentistry, right? If you want to do your own designs for a crown, a single crown, you want to do your own design and make your own design, send it to your own 3D printer and print it
Right?
out. You can actually do a crown in office for the cost of goods, set aside the cost for the equipment,
Yeah.
for cost of goods for 10, $12.
But
But
that's
if you want
also a
to,
ton of your time that
a
you could
ton of
be
your time,
utilizing, your own wheelhouse and the things that you're exceptional at and that you can only do, right?
because how expensive is a clinician's time per hour, right? On the GP side, they, love them, right? But what do they talk about hygiene, right? What is the production of hygiene chair per hour? Well, what is the production time for a highly skilled that does auxiliary services per hour of a clinician? So
For
if you can
sure.
cut down the time of what you're doing with anything that shouldn't be, right? Or anything that's challenging. And I talk about this, right? Phil Jackson talks about it in 11 Rings. He was a master at it. He took a lot of skilled people that had a lot of individual talent and made a team out of them. So if you have somebody in your practice that can do the ordering of specific things, why are you still ordering your implant parts and pieces? And just like you have somebody who's really good at that, they might not be good at empathy. Their idea
Right.
of empathy might be like, oh, your dog died? They're there. Sorry about that. But somebody else who cuddles up next to you and says, what can I do? And holds you and gives you a
Right.
tissue, they might be terrible and would screw up the ordering. But how do you empower individual team members, but you don't cede your overall authority? And that's what's critically important to know and understand, because as a leader, that is the expectation. So when you say, how do individuals go it alone? Absolutely, they can. But they also have so many responsibilities, which I know as a business owner now and having team members, not only W-2 full-time employees, but also 1099s that we're contracting in. And what does the growth structure look like? And how are we actually building an equity-based company and not a lifestyle business? And
Right.
all of these things that we're balancing, I can relate to that. You know, when do you add a team member and what can they do more than just this one singular thing? Those are the types of things that I can relate to clinicians with, especially the single practice owner, and be able to balance that. But with the DSOs, it's more of, well, I know what you need to do. You need to be able to produce year over year, right? Same store sales. You've got to do that because the PE money wants that. So how are we going to do that? And how do I make a return on investment that you do with our company to accelerate the growth in what period of time? Let me show you what that playbook looks like. Adopt your language. So these are the
Yes.
things that we do at G&A Consult that's really more of a differentiation. Can you do it alone? 1000%. But
But
we're
you know
also not a
what?
barnacle, right, on this ship forever. It's
That's
here's
right.
the systems and processes, here's the timeline that it's going to look like. Great, let's implement for you, give it to you, and then we exit stage left.
So there's only a couple of things there that I'm going to hang on to. And the first is barnacles take a really long time to grow. They don't just happen overnight, right?
Yep.
And if we were going to put like the essence of this conversation so far on a t-shirt, for me, it would say time bending. And in my mind, I'm also thinking about like the right person, the right place, and the right time, right? So, I mean, so much of what you're saying resonates with me. And I know that, you know, as a dentist who tries to develop that auxiliary of all on four, I feel like they just get out there and sometimes they get stuck. Why do you think they get stuck?
Yeah, I think a number of reasons. One, I'm just going to say it. I think it's the shiny key syndrome, right? So it's the 20, 30, $50,000 top line revenue. This is really attractive. And a number of things can happen then, right? So they believe that, and then they get into the prototype number 2, 3, 4, 5, and their margins continue to shrink, and then they're upside down. They do
Hmm.
that with 2 or 3 cases, and suddenly it's, I don't know if I want to do this, or I don't have the right team members to do this, or they'll get the clinical training on surgery and they're not prosthetically driven when it comes to that. So this is just in the clinical. It's not even the lane that we really work in, but I know so many clinicians that help with that aspect because it goes to your profitability. If you don't have the profitability to invest in the parts of the, okay, so what is your marketing strategy? Then the marketing strategy to convert the leads and then close the leads, because ultimately, before we engage with any client DSO group, the question is, where are you going? Like, what
Hmm.
is your ultimate goal? Is it simply to build it up for yourself? Is it to build up an M&A, merger and acquisition, and bring more into the group and eventually sell? Is it to build up and grow because you want this legacy because your kids now are in dental school or will be, and you want to be able to give them a practice? Like, what does that look like? Because that's a different conversation than, let me help you sell more cases. Let me help you sell more
Right.
cases, because that's all well and good, but we have case studies that show certainly the level they were at. We brought on an account that was doing about 22 arches in a month. We lifted them to 50 within 3 months. And what happened is the operational structure wasn't in place. So it tanked right after that, way down, because then they were pushing surgeries out 6 and 8 weeks. Nobody's going to sign on the dotted line for
Hmm.
a big procedure. They're like, you know what? Let me wait until 2 weeks before you have an opening. Then I'll give you the revenue. And so we saw this and then the huge drop. and then they built back up. But slowly we were able to like level that out long term. So it's not just about, let me sell more cases for you. Let me help you sell more cases, because it's really short term thinking. It's more of a longer term strategy of, and where are you trying to go? So we try to bring that into the conversation first, rather than let's just do a money grab, because we think that's really short minded and it's really not to benefit the clients. It's more benefiting self. And that doesn't, that just feels, that feels icky to me.
I mean, I feel like that is a big focus on what the specific dentist's definition of success is, right? And not only just the definition, but the strategy and implementation and action that it takes to get to that specific level of success. Greg, what would you say your definition of success is?
Hmm. Oh man, that's a really good question. And what I would say is that it's changed, right? And it continually evolves. But I can tell you, as a proud grandpa to Theo, as of fairly recently, born in July, you know, success to me is really, and I'm going to use the B word right here while we're recording, balance, right? And I don't mean that, people talk about like work-life balance, right? Because I don't know that I really adopt that necessarily, because if you look at, there are times when work needs to have more attention than others, right? If you're a practice owner and you lose one of your key employees, your business needs more attention during that time than
Yeah.
at times when things are running smoothly. But having time to, for me, it's being mindful and remembering that I am always on a learning journey, right? So for me, success is when I remember to take 2 or 3 connectedness vacations in a year. And for me, a connectedness vacation is when I shut off every single electronic and I don't look at it for at least 48 hours. Hopefully longer, but at least 48 hours. That means no TV, no phone, and they're shut off, like completely off. And thank goodness I have my husband, because he can do the GPS thing and he can make reservations if need be. Or hopefully we're somewhere like out in the woods, because we prefer the woods, although he prefers the beach. That's a whole nother story for another day, but there's compromise. But those are the pieces of success, right? Because I can sit here and say, oh, if I can build my business to this, or I can
Mhm.
satisfy clients with this, or I can under promise and over deliver. But truthfully, for me, it's, can I find the balance in my life between work and family and relation and give back? I'm very active in the recovery community because I feel like I was going to say I need to be, but it really is a passion of mine, because if I forget that my primary purpose is to stay sober and help another alcoholic achieve sobriety, then everything else, I miss the mark. And whenever something else takes precedence over it, people in my life that are close to me, they know it and they see it,
For
right?
sure.
Because those are the two things when I restarted this business 4 years ago that I made a promise to myself. I would talk openly about my sobriety and I would talk openly about my husband and not change pronouns for anyone or anything. And that's a commitment that I've kept pretty much, not 100%. I'll admit there have been times that I haven't, and that's okay too, because I'm a human being, not a human doing. And as much as I'd like to sit here and have everybody think, oh, this has been one of the best recordings and he's such an amazing person, I still fall every single day. I still make mistakes. The difference today, though, is that I'm aware of them. Now, whether I accept them and take action on it, most days I do, not every day. And that's where Backstage comes into play, because I allow myself to be vulnerable with other like-minded individuals who have an abundance mindset, who are on the same path and journey that I am. And so I just encourage anybody who, whether it's with Backstage or elsewhere, find your tribe and trust and be vulnerable with them. Because, they always say it too. There's a great poem called The Dash, right? It's on
Don't
your
make me
headstone,
cry.
it's your birth date and your death date, right? At least when you transition out of this body cavity, right? And the dash is everything that happens in between. And that truly are the moments. Like, people aren't gonna like remember whether or not you answered that email, or went to that last meeting, or did you get in front of that car in traffic. Maya Angelou said it so beautifully, right? People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they'll never forget the way you made them feel. And so if I can keep that in mind every single day, then I've lived a successful day. So when you asked about success, that's a successful day to me. And I'm not always top of mind with that. Just to be completely honest. But when I do remember that, that's a successful day for me.
You know, Greg, I couldn't be happier that you're a member of Backstage because I already knew that the tenets that we believe in, the core, abundance, fun, kindness, I already knew that those existed in you. But how do you bring those values into your own company culture?
Oh, it's a really good question. For me, honestly, what I've learned, what I'm learning, right, is there are times when revenue and profit have gone before that. And at times have not known how to get myself away from that. So I've been very fortunate to have a business coach who doesn't necessarily tell me anything that I don't already know, but creates the space and reflects back to me what I'm saying and sharing and asks me about my goals and what am I doing short term to all the things that a really good, effective business coach does. And I can tell you that my pride and ego has gotten in the way more often than I care to admit, oh, I don't need a business coach. Like things are going well. And
Michael
little
Jordan
did I
needs his
know.
business coach
Right, right.
and a
Yeah, I mean,
basketball coach.
it's constantly being a student of the game and learning. So how do I bring it in? It's remembering that there balance again. I'll come back to that word, right? That B word. We're talking a lot about the B word, right? It's that balance of accountability with being a heart-centered leader. And if I'm going to talk about being a heart-centered leader, which I am, I need to live into that. But it also doesn't mean I have to be a doormat and allow others to be able to get away with stuff that's not reasonable. It's okay setting expectations. It's okay setting boundaries, but it's also okay allowing people to see your vulnerability because when they
Hmm.
see that, and it's owning up to mistakes, right? Mistakes are just learning opportunities we haven't learned the lesson from yet. And it's all of that and allowing space and creating time, intentional time with team members, right? My sponsor is a beautiful man, and he loves to say that whenever I get into too much into business, he goes, "Oh, there he is, Mr. Big." And we both know when he says Mr. Big exactly what we're talking about. And it plays in the back of my head, and I can sense it when it's happening, right? I'm being Mr. Big, right? Rather than being the heart centered, authentic, integrated leader that I want to be. And so bringing it in is when I'm being my natural self.
So, is there a practice or a thing that you do that helps you be a human being, not a human doing, and
Mm.
kind of close off Mr. Big?
Yeah, it's not one thing, so it's a number of things. And for me, it's a couple of things. So one on my calendar that is always open. On my calendar, there's a reminder, and there's 5 of them right now, daily reminders, right? At 8 a.m., it pops up and says, "Do the next indicated thing." Some people talk about doing the next right thing. A lot of times, I don't know what is right, but I know the next indicated thing.
Yeah.
I start my morning every morning with a manifestation out loud in the shower that helps me, right, to set the day right. And those 5 reminders throughout the day, one of them just says breathe. And it's usually, not usually, it does pop up 2 o'clock in the afternoon because by then I am usually so far wound. There's another one at 12 noon that just it says pause. What a pleasure. Why is this in my movie? That comes from Kabbalah training. I did Kabbalah training. I started about a year ago, right? Because I, have a lot of influence of different teachings in my life. I don't subscribe to any particular one, but I absorb all of it. So it's a lot of those pieces. And then in the afternoon, I have on there that just says deep breath times 5. And that is my indication of you need to go meditate. And in the afternoon, my meditation has to be a guided meditation because the monkeys get very, very loud. And
Monkeys.
so, do I do it every day? No, I'd like to tell you I do. And so, Insight Timer is a beautiful tool, and it tells me how many days in a row that I do it. And I'll tell you this just as a little inside thing. I used to at times cheat and like start it and just do it for like a minute just so like my consecutive counter would go up. And I'm like, eventually I was like, what are you doing? Like you're literally lying to yourself. What are you doing? So I don't do that anymore. But those are some of the tools and reminders because I have to consistently, I'm a fast learner. I'm a consumer of stuff and knowledge, but I tend to forget almost as fast. And so I need those little reminders every single day throughout the day of just the pause. And now with my grandson Theo, like we have this shared album and the little red circles, like I'm a little OCD, not a lot, but a little. And so if I ever need a break, I just look when there's a little red circle and I just pull up like a picture or a short little video of him. And it's my automatic reset. And
I
it
love
reminds
it.
me that I'm a human being, not a human doing. And it just shifts my energy completely.
I love it so much. As we come to a close here, I want to talk about your bigger than business mission. You know, the
Mm.
thing that you want to just kick out to the world that makes the ripples, or the legacy that takes you, you know, into your next place, wherever that is, right? Because I love that you are a student of so many different practices. I love that. What's your bigger than business mission?
Mm. Gosh, it does shift and adjust. I know some people have like the one thing, and for me, it's a number of things. Oh, gosh, you really caught me with this one.
Did
When
I?
you said it, like I like 10 things flashed through my brain, and all at once they all went out. Um,
Man, listen, I resonate with your monkeys too. My monkeys fly, so they fly things right out of my brain in moments like this. You know, the thing that
yeah,
comes to my mind right out of the gate that we're doing together that I love so much is the Backstage Foundation and the
yeah, I
opportunity we're
love
going to
that.
have to, you know, take that and support a million different opportunities. The Diabetes Foundation, the Cancer Foundation, which of course I know cancer, you know, speaks to you and diabetes speaks to me, but I know there's a million other opportunities that we're going to have.
Yeah, I
And
guess,
we're doing that
yeah,
together. That's
for
exciting.
sure, yeah, and
What's
and my
yours?
sister passed from cancer as well. It runs rampant on the female side of my family. Two nieces who are in remission from it. So it for me, and I spoke on this fairly recently. If there's one thing to remove the stigmatism of addiction in dental, because there still is a huge stigmatism, and I don't know all of the details of licensing and how challenging it can be for those that are licensed, right? Clinicians and hygienists and dental assistants and all of that to come forward and say, I have a problem, right? Whether it's, alcoholism or drug addiction. But what I know to be true for me is that anything that prevents somebody from getting the help they need when they raise their hand,
Yeah.
I just know from the rooms of recovery, I see people on the other side of it working their way through, whether they're teachers or doctors or nurses or fill in the blank of how they're working their way through if they have a desire to. And what I see, which is very challenging to me, and there's people talking about it, right? Laura Nelson and Margie Schaller with Silver Life Rocks, and Martin
Yeah.
Mendelson and Kyle Stanley are talking about it, right? I don't know that it has a big enough stage, even though, wellness and health and wellness is talked about. And I'll just go straight to the heart of it. It it's got to be okay to not be okay, whatever that looks like. And across across the board. And it's really a dental assistant to a dental assistant, somebody at the front desk sitting next to somebody at the front desk, because they will recognize a change that happens, and they will recognize through body language and through a mood that's elongated or that's happening. Not somebody who's sad because, like, something happened, right? They got a flat tire. We're talking about like the elongation of a depression or something that's happening, or changing of because they're becoming like their own victim of some type of addiction, whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, shopping, whatever it is, because there's too many people being lost in our industry, whether it's to death or just leaving from the stresses, and it's not being talked about enough. So if there is one passion, it would be to bring visibility. I am not well educated enough in the area other than being somebody in recovery. And so if there were, an opportunity for me to be free of the day-to-day grind of what I'm doing now and financially free to do that, and that shouldn't be the barrier. I should just start doing more of it now. I'm just going to call myself out. I just did, right? For everybody to see, right?
Easy.
That it's okay to not be okay. And that's really the passion that I need to, words being intentional, follow and lift up more in our industry, because I think it needs to be talked about.
So I'm not going to let you call yourself out, because I happen to remember that the topic of your conversation, your talk, your TED style type talk for Dentistry's Got Talent was it's okay to not be okay. So I think just being on stage and having that conversation in a huge room filled full of 175 people was exactly what you're talking about. And I have to disagree with you also about not being educated about the situation. You're in recovery. So guess what? In my mind, you're an expert because
Mm,
you've done it. And people need to see and know that there is somebody out there who's done it, and that means you can do it too. And you might need
mm,
somebody by your side. And I just know in my heart that no matter who came to you and said they needed somebody by their side, that you would say, tag me in, coach. So, Greg, the last thing I want to ask, and I have to tell you, if GNA consult wasn't at the top of your list of people to work with already, it better be now, because this is a real, authentic, amazing human being who is also a human doing, because he's out there doing everything that he can do to build this vertical, this auxiliary of full arch in your practices. He is the only name to work with. And that's how I feel about it. So I'm just going to put it out there.
mm.
Greg, how do we contact you if we're interested in going forward working with GNA Consult?
Yeah, one of the easiest ways is to go to the website, dentalconsult, the number 4, the letter U.com. Or if you can spell my name, search me up on any socials. I'm all over, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, both my personal name and GNA, the letters consult, on all 3 of those platforms too. You can just DM me and find me that way for sure.
And if you can't find Greg, you can find me and I
Yeah.
will direct you to Greg, and we'll make sure all of his contact is in the show notes. And lastly, I just want to say, Greg, thank you so much for being here, sharing so deeply and personally about your business, who you are as a human. And I just think you're beautiful inside and out. And I'm so happy to call you my friend. I'm so happy to call you my backstage brother. And for those of you that are out there wondering about backstage, what I have to tell you is backstage, they will have your back. Thanks so much for being with us. Take care.